What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today I'm going to be sharing my top 10 underrated common as well as rare variants in Infinite Warfare. I'm going to be taking a look at the common and rare variants that are arguably better than their legendary or epic counterparts, or at least give them a solid run for their money. The purpose behind this is to show that legendaries and epics aren't always the best choice, and it just might save you a bunch of salvage down the road. Let's get into it. Alright guys, so before we get into this list, I do want to point out that this is going to be partially opinion based. It's going to be based on preferences and playstyles. So just because it works for me, I'm not saying for sure that it's going to work out better than the legendary or epic for you. So kicking it off with actually one of my favorite common variants in the game, this is the R3K Counterbalance. I use this variant over any of the other variants of the R3K, and I've got a bunch of them. I don't have the Wrecked, I don't have the Epic Wrecked, but that's like a completely different gun anyways. If you're comparing it to all of the other 3-round burst R3Ks, this is my personal favorite, and I use this more than any of the other ones. The reason behind this is you get that stability weapon perk, which is in fact noticeable when you're firing your burst. It makes for a lot more one burst kills in my personal opinion, and based on my personal experience. And that stability weapon perk is just doing so much more for me than any of the other variants. But having said this, getting into the second spot here, we have the R3K Spearhead, which is a rare variant, and for a lot of people this is their preference, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. With the Spearhead, you get that decreased burst delay so you can fire your bursts much faster. And when you're going for those kills where it requires you to fire more than one burst, this variant is definitely the way to go. Keep in mind you will lose a little bit of that accuracy because you don't have as much time to recenter between bursts, but for close to mid-range, the Spearhead is excellent for core game modes. I still personally prefer the Counterbalance most of the time for that extra accuracy, but the Spearhead is also a great choice, and I would say both of these variants are clearly superior to any of the other 3-round burst R3K variants. Getting into number 3, we have what I think is a very underrated rare variant of the K-Bar, and that is the Radiant. I personally have the epic variant of this, the Invective, and I actually use the Radiant more than I use the Invective. The main reason behind this is that focus weapon perk. I find on the K-Bar, focus is a very valuable weapon perk because the K-Bar is the type of assault rifle where your idle sway kicks in almost immediately after aiming down sight, unlike with some of the other ones like the NV4 where it takes a little while to kick in. And therefore this focus weapon perk helps you get that first shot on target every single time. You don't have to mess around with that idle sway. And this will in turn effectively reduce your recoil because you don't have to deal with that idle sway while you're firing. So for me, if I'm using the K-Bar, the Radiant is the way to go. Moving on to the next one, we have the Volk Regulator. This is one of the newer variants, and it's just a common variant, so you can just buy it with 200 salvage, and it gives you the stability weapon perk. And on the Volk, this is definitely helpful and definitely noticeable, especially when you stack it with foregrip. The recoil on the Volk is very unpredictable, so it's nice to get that reduced a little bit. Makes this gun a lot more viable. This also carries on to the next one on our list, which is the Volk Greed, which also has stability, same as the Regulator, but this one's now a rare variant, so it costs a little bit more salvage. And the reason it does cost a little bit more is we also get the Jackpot weapon perk, which is a nice little bonus over the Regulator. Getting into the next one, it's once again another rare variant of the Volk, and this is the Vexed. And the reason behind this one is it gives you on point. I don't really care about the Creeper weapon perk, but on point allows you to aim down sight faster, which is great because the aim down sight time is one of the big downsides of the Volk. It is the slowest aiming down sight assault rifle by default, so this on point weapon perk brings it more in line with the other assault rifles. So in my opinion, commons and rares are the way to go for Volk variants. There's no need to be spending a bunch of salvage on the legendaries or epics. Getting into the SMGs, one of my favorite variants of the RPR Evo is the very first common called the Stabilizer. And the reason behind this is it gives you that focus weapon perk, and that really helps especially when you're in the assault rifle mode with the RPR Evo. The SMG mode, usually idle sway doesn't play much of a factor when you're up close and personal with an SMG, but when you're in that assault rifle mode, this Stabilizer weapon perk definitely helps a ton. Now I'll be honest, I don't have very many of the RPR Evo variants, and if I did have the Ripper, yeah, I would probably go with the Epic Ripper over this. But keep in mind, if you do use the RPR in assault rifle mode more than the SMG mode like I do, this is almost exactly the same gun as the Ripper, because the Ripper also gives you focus and it increases your fire rate, but that increase to your fire rate is only in the SMG mode, so if you're using it in the assault rifle mode, it's exactly the same as the Stabilizer, but you save 3,800 salvage. Getting into the sniper rifles, my favorite variant of the KBS longbow is, again, the very first common, which is only 200 salvage, and that is the Stasis. The reason behind this is it gives you the focus weapon perk, and with the focus weapon perk on a sniper rifle, you never have to hold your breath again. This is extremely valuable to me because it's just one less thing I have to think about, and it's one less thing I have to wait for as I'm trying to pick off a really precise shot. Now keep in mind the epic variant called the Harbinger. This also has the focus weapon perk in addition to feeder, which allows you to rechamber faster. So clearly the Harbinger is better than the Stasis, but is it 3800 salvage better? Not in my opinion. So of course, if I did happen to get lucky and get the Harbinger out of a supply drop, I would use that over the Stasis, but I am extremely content using the Stasis and not spending any salvage on the Harbinger or any other variant because it's such a solid common variant. So finally, we're going to move on to the mission team depot for our guns, and the first one here is the FHR Counterweight. I have all of the FHR variants, and I use the Counterweight over all of them. This gun has insanely high recoil, and you definitely notice a difference when you pop stability on there, especially when you combine it with a foregrip, so I prefer this over any of the other ones, including the Epic Windfall. And finally, for our number 10 most underrated common or rare variant, we have the HVR Atlas. In my opinion, this is just better than all of the other HVR variants. Now I will say the Epic variant, which is the Gemini, it gives you the akimbo HVRs, that's a lot of fun to use, but it's not going to be as consistent as the HVR Atlas. And this one gives you sensor as well as stability, so you get that little bit of reduction to your recoil, which definitely helps because I find the HVR kind of jumps side to side a little bit with its recoil. And then the sensor weapon perk, that's also great because when you shoot an enemy that's not using Ghost, then they will pop up on your minimap and you'll be able to track them in real time for several seconds. So there we have it. Those are my top 10 most underrated common as well as rare variants in Infinite Warfare. I'd like to know in the comment section below, what are your favorite common as well as rare variants that you would rather use over their legendary or epic counterparts? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.